Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. And I'm so happy to be here at this very interesting conference with all your fantastic examples and fantastic people doing great work. I hope I can inspire you. I'm going to be speaking in English, and I will be using a lot of difficult words because it's about transformation of the business sector, natural science, and so on. So please bear with me if I don't pronounce it exactly properly, but I think that you will get the meaning. So I'm the editor-in-chief of Aktuell Hållbarhet. It's a niche magazine for professionals who work in the business sector, with in the public sector, with transformation of making this world more green. It's about reducing carbon emission, circular economy, and all sorts of things that I will go into more in detail. And they're very knowledgeable professionals. So I will talk about our target group a little bit first. This is what it looks like. Our main priority is online first. And I will get into the business model a little bit later, and I will get into the media organization that runs us a little bit later. But this is the target group are knowledgeable professionals who work with big public listed companies, smaller companies, NGO, politicians, and also within the public sector. For instance, they could be buying up food for schools. How can they reduce their emission of carbon dioxide? And how can they be more circular? So those are our clients. They're very knowledgeable. They know what they want. And our aim is to make them do a better job. So our aim is to be on our toes, to serve them with the news and rules and regulations on what they need to do a better job to transform this society that we're in. So this is just a pack shot of what it looks like online. And what we do, we have daily news on our website. Our main priority is, of course, to drive people into our website, to have them logged in, to check their behavior, to know what they're doing. We also have goals on how to convert and what we need to reach and so on. But we have several offers to our readers, several different specialized newsletters, and they can also subscribe to the magazine that we have. And we're part of this larger media group, but it started off as two independent media outlets that also had a similar business model. And I will get into that later on. So I just want to give you some examples of what we do for our readers. And at the moment, I just would like to say that the green transition is probably the largest transition that we will experience in the world we live in if we don't rush towards that cliff and just fall off. And there is a huge demand for professionals who are skilled and can help the industry transform. So the business sector is screaming for these professionals, and there's not enough of educated people to do this transformation. So the job market is fantastic. And these are a few examples. The first one is IKEA, the Swedish company that you might be aware of, sells furniture. They have a business model that you could say is not sustainable for the future. So they started doing secondhand recycling as a project. And after the first year, this was profitable. So this is an article that we wrote about. This project was profitable, and they will keep on doing it. Second one is about green hush, if you've heard about that. Many companies are afraid to communicate their advances on climate adjustments, for instance, reducing emissions and so on, because they are afraid of us, the journalists and other academics, of being shamed as greenwashers. So they have started to be silent about their progress. And this is something that is spreading in the business sector, of course, very worrisome for the investors, because they need these targets in order to push investments towards the green sector. So this is another article that we wrote about. This is also the EU pushing out rules and regulations and laws to go into transformation. And this is about, this was another article that we wrote about. The EU are setting some targets for industries on how to behave. Some more things that we do. An expert saying more companies will be caught for greenwashing in the coming years. And there will be fines, but the fines will not be crucial. It will be the reputation that this company has that will be dangerous for them. And just this week, as we're here, the EU passed a new proposal on greenwashing, and they were also very specific in this proposal on what kind of greenwashing they will be looking for, and that has to do with communication. So you cannot say like the eco-friendly something if you're not, you know. So yeah, and to continue, we do a special EU week because there's so much happening in the EU at the moment. So we send out a newsletter every Friday to our subscribers on all the rules, regulations, political discussions, debates, sidings on what is happening in the EU regarding these rules and regulations. This example is for an example from when EU put a proposal on phasing out fluorinated compounds, apparently in English, which is contributing to greenhouse gases and has a depleting effect on the ozone layer. Last one, are you a sustainability professional? Here are the best arguments to top your salary, because they have a fantastic job market and they have great salaries. So if you want to change your profession, this is where you should go. This is what makes us very special. We have a guiding element. We have the how in our journalism. We try to help our readers understand what these rules and regulations mean for them. How will they comply? What are the setbacks? What are the fallbacks? How can they work with you know, these different rules and regulations that are coming out? And the EU, for instance, has decided a law on sustainability reporting for all major listed companies coming into effect to 2024. And it requires them to be significantly more comprehensive on their emissions and various other targets. And they should not only report and reflect on how they affect the environment, but also on possible climate effects, how these effects might affect their company. It's called a double materiality or something in English, if you know, if you've heard this word. So they're going to have to be checking their effects on how they, their companies. And Sandvik, which is a Swedish big global industry group with technical solutions for the mining industry and so on, metal, they have just started this process. And in a coming article that we have, they say they have analyzed their impact, and it's like laying a puzzle, what impact they have on climate change and social justice, and how this can be organized to diminish this effect. And they say that we don't only have to understand the risks we're facing today. Something that might not be a risk today could be a risk in future. And also, how can future environments affect their businesses? If they have a factory, let's say they don't have this particular group, but let's say you have a factory in Bangladesh, perhaps you cannot follow what's going on there as closely. So you might move your factories closer to home, perhaps to Poland, which a Swedish glass company that makes glasses did. So the analysis is not what they think should happen in the future, Sandvik says. It's about the analysis of their findings and their results. We will have to analyze our whole value chain, where it will have effect and what kind of output this will mean. So this is super important regulation that's coming in, and companies that do not comply with this will be subjected to sanctions from the EU. And the bigger companies are starting next year, and then is the rollout list of smaller companies. And but this is not the only thing we do. We also do, we rank the 101 most influential people and professional and advocates in sustainability every year. This is very popular, of course, with our target group. If you can be on this list, you can be Greta, who won last year, who is a Swedish climate activist, or you can be a sustainability manager that has made some important changes last year, for instance, reduced carbon emission, or has moved your factory from Xinjiang or something like this. But you can also be a journalist or a writer or an NGO or an activist or something like this. We also rank, since 14 years, the 290 municipalities in Sweden, how is their work on environmental and the climate going, their change? How are they working with these sectors, everything from building houses, garbage, making the cities more green, what kind of electrical cars they have, all sorts of things. We ask them questions, and they have to answer certain questions truthfully, because we are only 6 people and we cannot investigate 290 municipalities. So they have to answer truthfully, and then we also gather data and stats on emissions and so on. And there's been some critique about this. What kind of a method is this? Well, we say no one else is doing it. We'd be happy if someone else was doing it, but we expect these municipalities to answer truthfully. And if they don't, please, if you're in the local media, follow it up. We cannot follow all of this up. Another example is ranking sustainability work in listed companies. These are the big listed companies on the Swedish stock market. And how are they working with sustainability targets on lowering their carbon footprints? Last year, we investigated, or we asked them to answer about how they're assessing risks for the future. Are they making any scenario analysis of their businesses? What will happen to their business in the future? Will there be like the typewriter faucet, if you remember, who didn't believe in digital transformation, doesn't exist anymore? Will there be coffee in the future? If you're producing coffee, if there will not be coffee, what are your plans? How are you going to bring in your clients? So unfortunately, the big companies are not really there yet, but they are starting to look at these things. We also do investigations. This was trucks cheating with cleaning their exhaust fumes, and our reporter called and could very easily buy one of these fake exhaust things that you could put on your lorry. And we also, of course, have to be better at social justice and human rights. So we also check the big companies, how are they doing on diversity? Not so good, and especially not the Swedish banks, reputation for not including non-white people. So this is also something that we try to report much more on. We'd still have the print, but our primary goal is to bring in subscribers online, but to keep the print as long as it's valuable and brings in revenues for our readers. So with that, we also have another pillar. We do webinars and events, but that's not us doing it. It's another section of the company, because we need to keep a very clean cut between journalism and partnerships, which we've discussed here before. So we have webinars, we have events. This is our flagship last year from the big listed companies, how they're working on sustainability and transformation. And we also have courses and tailored trainings for the professionals, where the universities cannot move as fast. For instance, with the EU regulations, this is our top selling course right now. How will they learn how to report the financial impact it will have and so on? And this is not also us doing it, the reporters. My team, we're focusing on the journalism. Everything else evolves around us. So how is this organization? We are part of Bonnier News, which is the largest, one of the largest media companies in Sweden. They have a strong belief in democracy and freedom of expression. So it's actually fantastic to have such an owner. I've worked with various kinds of organizations and before as a journalist, and I think this is really their belief. So make sure, or perhaps create a coalition of strong owners, you can also be successful. And they are the largest media house. They have the daily very prominent Dagens Nyheter, which is the equivalent of New York Times, you could say. They have evening papers, which is the first pillar. Second pillar is local news in local towns. Third pillar is lifestyle and different things for children. And fourth pillar is the business sector, which I will go into a little bit more, because that's where we belong. So the business sector has our flagship, which is Financial Times of Sweden, called Dagens Industri. And then we have trade media, where I belong, with Aktuell Hållbarhet. It can be geared towards the building industry, the real estate, medical professionals, and that's not about diseases then, it's about hospitals and running things, you know. And then we have very niche, deep dive newsletters, very profitable, very few people subscribing, but profitable, could be 500 on these different newsletters on pensions or risks or health or something like that. And we also have investor newsletters. This is the strategy of our group. As you can see, the premium strategy is to transform print by developing the digital newspaper. That is the prime objective for all us. And we have strict objectives every year where we have to learn, change according to the behavior of the readers. We follow the readers. We follow what makes them read, how long do they read, what makes them stay, what makes them go on further, and if they also buy articles if they come from the outside. So we follow both outside readers coming into our site, but we also follow those who are already subscribers. The second strategy is the advertising strategy, which is going through all these niche magazines. They're selling to all these niche magazines on a mutual platform. And then we have the event business side, which is, as I gave you an example of, very successful, very well done events, almost like, you know, TV things that these professionals can go to. We have networks, we have small networks for professionals, perhaps working in banks with sustainability. We have luncheons, we have all kinds of things, not done by us. This is done by a different sector. They're very profitable, they also partner. They make, let's say, this big Grant Thornton pay for a seminar. And they will hold the seminar, but the journalists will not do the seminars. The journalists will not do these transactions. We have very strict rules between journalism and other kind of content, because we believe that journalism has to be credible and in the center of all this indispensable content. If we don't exist, these other business opportunities will not exist. I don't know how to get rid of this thing here. I'm sorry about that. Okay. So, and then we also have the tailored business, as I talked to you about. So what do our revenues look like? We still have most of our revenues from subscriptions, and we're increasing on digital subscriptions exactly as we're supposed to do. And we're losing a little bit on print. We also have 29% from these tailored courses and 21% from events, and then advertising 10%. So these are our four legs, you could say. And the journalism, the credible journalism, is in the middle. And that's also very important for the owners to push this all the time, that we have never to budge on our journalism, and we have to be very good at what we're doing. Bonnier News has as a strategic goal to reduce their carbon emissions, to go further than the Paris Accords. But this is for the whole organization, which consists of 8,000 employees and 2,000 journalists. So, but still, as we've talked about here today, the most important asset, of course, is a free and independent journalism, and it will create a more diverse democracy, and a freedom of expression and free press is at the core of this organization. And they're very profitable and they're making a lot of money. So just let me show you some trends that we've seen in the group. Moving away from fossil fuel, as you know, has become increasingly urgent, especially with the war in Ukraine and Russia's attack on Ukraine, and the EU dependency on gas and oil. So the EU is moving forward very much on this issue. And so that's one thing that is, we see within the banks, we see they want to invest their money into more green industries and so on. And you know that since 2005, the EU has a system for trading emission rights. So they put a price on carbon. You have to pay a price on the carbon you emit, and you can exchange this. There's a market for this. And in December last year, they have also decided to set up a trading system which will be for imported goods. So that will affect all the imported goods coming in from outside the EU will have a price tag of how much carbon they've emitted. And You can call it a custom tariff for carbon emissions, if you like. And I don't know if you know Professor Johan Rockström, but he has said in an article that we had, he's part of the IPCC panel. We now see that the EU emissions trading is finally starting to work, and which actually has given a price on fossil fuel. And a few weeks ago, we saw the highest price so far. And we also see the global race for the new green transition. You probably heard the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act that Biden put out was it some months ago? I can't remember exactly. And he promised $369 billion for climate change, which of course gave the EU a total hiccup because they've been pushing and doing so many good regulations and, you know, trying to boost their industries, and especially Sweden in the Nordic, where we've just recently found a lot of minerals. We're becoming very afraid what's going to happen with this. So they answered with their own package very shortly after, with approximately the same amount of money. And although companies that are Swedish flagships like the electronic battery Northvolt have said that they might be moving to the United States because they have better economical possibilities there. So there's a race for this geopolitical, and also, of course, Russia and China recently met, and someone talked about China here earlier on. They are here for the resources in Africa, of course, and the minerals will be in the core of this green transition if we manage to change. So who will be the power leader for the minerals? Will it be the EU? Will it be China? Will it be Russia? Will it be Africa or Asia or Latin America? El Salvador say they will be the leaders. What about Africa? What about the African leaders? What about Asia? This is the new geopolitical order. Is that me? So this is something to follow, I think, as a journalist for sure. And human rights. Will human rights be important for investors? Many think they do. With the ESG criteria that has been debated lately, which means environmental, social, and governance, there are a set of standards for a company's behavior. And investing on ESG companies and bonds and so on is increasingly going up, but there is a lack of transparency around this reporting, and it's not full, waterproof at all. But these funds have recently moved from a trickle to a flood. So in the third quarter of 2021, global sustainable funds hit a record high of 3.9 trillion more than the year before. And so investors want to move to invest in what they believe is the future for good revenues, and it's not fossil fuel. And the EU's regulation, I'm not going to go into details about this, but as you see, it's almost like it's an overwhelming soup of abbreviations that no one can keep track of. That's why they have to go to all our courses, these sustainability managers, because it's so difficult. And the trends, sustainability reporting will be super important for business value and will impact their shares. Tracking the value chain will be more important for companies. It will be difficult, though. The green market will transform societies and the global economy. The green consumers increase. As you see, the hipsters don't buy a hamburger with meat, they buy a vegan burger, right? And US and EU regulations, risk on reporting and sustainable finance will reshape the market. And geopolitical conflicts will increase over minerals and resources and raw materials. And we know that there's not enough raw material. And one interesting thing is that who is leading this transition? Is it the politicians or the businesses? The businesses want mutual regulations because they want to move ahead and make profits. The politicians are not following. They're promising their voters cheaper gas in their cars. So is media missing the action? We've discussed that a lot, and I think there would be some things that media will have to think about. I'm just moving forward here a little bit, sorry. So what can we do? Are we reporting the right things? We are reporting about fires, as someone said, explosions, floodings, that sort of thing. But are we following this thing that I just told you about? And what is the step forward to a more sustainable world? How is the general public aware of what's going on within the business sector, for instance? Are they aware of these things? It is a technical issue. It is natural science. It is becoming very politicized, even amongst academics, where they say, no, this is not true. Nuclear powers is the solution. We will have small nuclear powers everywhere close to your business. Is this true? It's very difficult for a reporter to know these things. I am a humanist myself. I'm not a natural scientist. I'm not an engineer. But I believe in the questions that we can ask. I believe that we can ask how. What do you mean? Please explain. Go further. Keep on asking those politicians and don't give up. And don't be afraid to become cross as a little bit stupid, because, I mean, no one really knows the answer here. And if climate change was a big black hole, a big fog that we would walk in, maybe we would panic a bit more. But it's like we cannot see what's happening, and therefore we do not act. But the business sector is actually acting, and those will be the winners in the future, those who do, if we manage to stop this. So, I mean, garbage is piling up. I asked a taxi driver, my Uber driver here, how is garbage in Kenya? Because we've heard you make a lot of progress. Well, not so good, he said. People are just throwing things. I don't know if that's true, but it's true also in Sweden. We are putting garbage into the ground and pretend it doesn't exist. We're hiding it, And there's not enough copper in the world to go around. For the new green transition, we will need copper minerals. There is not enough copper in the world. So what are we going to do? Are we going to start recycling? Are we going to think about a new business model that is circular? And what about all our phones that are stuck in our drawers? How do we recycle all this? And, this is something that we should tackle the politicians with. What are they doing about this garbage crisis? What are they doing about recycling raw materials and creating new green businesses? About the nature must be treated as an asset, as a value. 1 million species are threatened by extinction, as you know. In 30 years, the oceans may contain more plastic than fish. 1/3 of all coral reefs have already disappeared. And without functioning nature, our food supply will not be lasting. We will have an insert of refugees. So have you seen this movie, Don't Look Up, on Netflix? Unfortunately, many of the scientists who've been trying to warn us about this say this is exactly how they felt. They've been trying to warn the media all the time about, what's happening, but just be treated like any other news item. It's another story coming up. Oh, what are you wearing? That's a really nice shirt there. Did you buy that somewhere? And so this is something that is very difficult with the media logic. And my question is, and I don't want to end on a depressing note, but I have a little glimpse into the future for you afterwards, if you would like to see it. So can media be shall we still be part of the problem, or shall we be part of the solution? That is the question I have for you. And before we end, I just want to show this new invention that Elon Musk apparently is after. It's the electric shuttle that will start circulating in Stockholm soon, driving people from islands to Stockholm. And I will just show you how it works if Daniel can put this on somehow. Can you do it? Oh, what happened? So thank you, Daniel. So that was it for me. Do we want to be part of the change, or do we want to be part of the old order? Thank you.